couple of communities.
The meeting that was retracted and cancelled off our calendar. Text you going, there's nothing.
7 to 8.
Well, that's what you and I got sent. He got the day version.
David firing on all guns, are you, David?
It was in my old diary, so I just can't see that again. It's cool. We go with Louie, doesn't come
Oh, yeah,
down.
that's what things to do, yeah.
Council performance is best. Trinity standing for the Motor Review. Hey, yeah. How that way?
Oh,
You ask her, you ask Trinity. She doesn't know who.
yeah.
No way.
Well, hopefully it's not gone to print.
Yeah.
Because I haven't had any invites to meet the Motueka candidate meetings because I'm registered apparently in Waimea Mootrees.
Oh, it looks nice.
I've had invites from
Dwayne's just apologising for not being here.
Tree Hills.
Oh, really? Did you not spell Motueka? Did you put Motueka?
Very clear.
On nominations.
All right, let's do it. I thought there was 2 youth councillors coming, but it is 4 o'clock, so let's break into what is 30 pages, but hopefully only 30 minutes. So welcome, Board Member Armstrong, and I'm sorry to hear that finally you've seconded, but you're looking very good. Would you like to open us, Janie?
Whakataki hau ki te uru, whakataki hau ki te tonga kia mākina kina ki uta kai, e hi aki ana ti atu kora, te huhuka hi hauhu ti hei mauri ora.
So I think I've got an apology from Dwayne. Is that what come up with the message? Or is it from Richard Kay?
No, Dwayne's just apologising for not being here in person.
Oh, that's all right. So he's going to stay with us. He's not going to leave us. And Richard Kay sent me an email, said he may join, he may not join. And I have no idea where Councillor Ogilvie, he's just walking in the door. Oh,
Push. That's heavy.
Brilliant. No. Okay. There's no declaration of interest for this meeting, is there? We've already been through this. So I think we might head to you, Amy. You don't need to go through this report. The questions that Board Member Armstrong sent through a page of questions which basically covered most of my questions off. So we might reference that. But is there anything in this report you want to highlight, Amy, or is there any changes or additions?
No, there isn't. Just to briefly touch on the process to how we've got to here. So we briefed you on the Better Off funding in June. Council had a workshop at the end of July to consider a range of projects, and I then met with your councillors and we talked about the Motueka Ward projects, which is largely the list and advice that's provided in the report for this meeting.
Thanks, Amy. I guess if I start off with a couple, which David's raised as well. So just correct me if I'm wrong. So the 2 options you currently have, they look similar, but there's a key difference in package 2 on page 5, which is the projects become the backup projects to the planned transport investment projects.
Yes, so there's 2 key options. You can either choose to use some of the Better Off funding as the local share for the Transport Choices application. If that application is not successful, we can reallocate the Better Off funding to those 3 projects. Or you can choose not to put it towards the Transport Choices application and just go with the 3 projects.
Great, thank you. That's how I read it. So just for clarity, if you look on page 8 of the report, that's the Transport Choices funding options. And I guess the one that stands out a mile for me is you'll see 1, 2, 3, 4th down in cycle shelters. If it was a Transport Choices funding project, potentially Better Off funding would be 10K, not the 400K, and 90K could come from that option package. So there's distinct differences in terms of if you went for package 2 or variation, you'd be looking at the projects listed on page 8, unless the funding wasn't received, unless there was a difference, then the backup options would become fully funding a bike shelter, designing construction of the shared criteria path, and designing construction of the Motueka Street State Plan. That's correct, Amy?
Yes, that's correct. Drew, did you want to add anything further?
Yeah, only insofar as that
if we get the better off funding, we can do most of what was in the package that we've already got in package one.
Yes.
And then some more. So in effect, you get a multiplier effect of around 10 times.
Yes. So the thing that seems to be the casualty in this, though, is potentially the Kaiteri Shared Path
That's correct.
project, which is 50% TIF funded.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Does that make sense? So I guess if you were doing some formulas like I did in my head, the Kaiteri Shared Path are already potentially 50% funded by the TIF funding. So for 330,000, you get $660,000 worth of work done. If the transport share option of the balance was in there of 400 and something thousand that included the bike shelters, it will go a lot further.
Yeah.
I haven't got this wrong?
No,
Okay.
you've probably summarised it really well. It's a difficult thing to summarise, but yes, yeah. That would be the sacrifice, would be the
Criteria.
criteria.
So do you want us, if you can indulge me, if we can start from the first part and go A and B and E on package one is the same as A, B and C in package two. So are you happy that community pool, the landscape, the library and the skate park, or whatever package they're in both of them, that you're happy with those, no questions? From a board perspective. Yeah.
So on the community pool, David was correct. The current funding allocated towards that detailed design can be reallocated towards capital costs. And if we get the opportunity to apply for tranche 2 in July 2024, we can also look to contribute to the capital cost then.
So then for me, really, and if other members have got such different thought, is the key discussion is how important is the Kaiteri Shared Path, and it probably is. Is that a project that you want to be funded through the better off funding, as it appears in package one, or is it something that you'd be happy to sacrifice and use the $730,000 towards partnership funding in that transport options, which doesn't include that project?
I'm personally for the latter.
Taking Kaiteri transport.
Yeah.
Richard?
The way I see it is we've got to try and lift the 100K to the pool somehow.
We haven't got a feasibility
This
study.
is just design. So tranche 2 is the.
How can we give 100,000 to something we don't know anything about?
Well,
We don't.
thing is that,
So if
We
I'm
don't know
right,
what's going to happen.
yeah, right. Well, I would suggest that, well, it should be happening.
Well, I agree with you.
Yeah. And what I'm saying is,
Design something we haven't got feasibility study.
yeah, but when I'm travelling around
The
the
place, for
district,
God's sake.
that's the one thing that I get bailed up about. Is how the hell have we not got a pool? Because we are in a situation where we've got this money coming from Three Waters, so let's see, I see it meets the bottom one, the bottom criteria quite happily, the third criteria. And the way I'm seeing it is we've just got to get that damn thing built. Because the pool committee,
What cost? What cost? And
hang on,
what
hang on, can I just
what
get,
cost?
can I just get Amy to, so Amy, in terms of, hang on, David, over me, hang on. So in terms of the better off funding, Amy, this is specifically tagged detailed design at $100,000.
Yes,
Are there
which there is already funding tagged for
Yes.
through the last AP process, and that funding will then go towards future capital costs.
Because I
We're
believe
not
that-
saying that this isn't an important project. It's in the roundtable discussions with the council, it definitely came out on top. However, the current funding arrangement to deliver that build, I think there's a 1/3 funded by the community arrangement in place at the moment. Throwing a heap of money at it right now is not going to give enough time for the community to pull together that funding. And as has been raised, we don't know what we're funding yet. So the detailed design needs to show what we're going to build.
And correct me if I'm wrong, there's been discussion that the project itself is eligible for tranche 2 if that happens.
Yep, council was quite comfortable with the capital costs part of all of coming.
So is there any scope in this funding mechanism just to bank essentially money for fundraising, where they have to be specific projects with a specific time of delivery?
They have to be delivered within 5 years. They have to have milestones, and they have to be structured as projects.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so that's Richard. Any other comments?
I just am supportive of, I don't care about the other three, I just care about the money towards trying to get the transport choices share, so 730 is that.
What's the transport share?
So if you go to page 8,
And so package 2 at the bottom, 730 towards transport choices, local share, the fund. That's
so Drew or Dwayne, what's your gut feeling in terms of the likelihood of that amount of funding? So would it be part of? Is that a fair amount to expect? Is it?
So through the chair, we're quietly confident is I think the way. We've had really good response from Motueka around this. They know their packages, they know the walking and cycling strategy quite well, and they have held it up as an example of best practice. We are quietly confident. With other things like public transport services that we're starting next year, that sits really well with them. So it actually, we believe we've got a good chance.
Okay. Board member Armstrong, did you just put your hand up if you want to?
Okay, sorry, I'm finding it difficult to hear a couple of things being said, so I've just tried putting my headphones on. And can you hear me?
We can hear you well.
Okay, okay. No, no. So far, I'm following what's going on. I think.
Okay.
My brain is a little bit COVID fuddled, more than normal.
So the key part for me is the Kaiteri shared path. How do we fund it if we don't fund this through 50% better off funding? Is there any magic budgets that?
So through the chair, that's the rub. We can't see another option to fund that. So if we weren't funding it through better off funding, then we might have to go back to tourism infrastructure fund and say we can't provide the local share. Yeah.
If we hadn't had this federal funding, how would we have funded it? Because it's in the long-term plan.
Through chair, it's not in the long-term plan.
But where did I see it mentioned recently? Somewhere.
It was probably in regards to tourism infrastructure fund. No, we haven't included it. So it's not in the walking and cycling strategy either. So it was a project that was outside of all of those things, but it did very well with the tourism aspect of it. So we took the opportunity to, while we could, on the idea that if we got funding approval, then we would look at what options we had available to us. And we did have in mind that the better off funding would be a good opportunity.
Perhaps it was in the towns and villages paper we had this morning. I saw it.
Anything else?
This morning.
Because when we had our councillor meeting with Amy, she brought it up.
Is there anybody else that's worried about losing that Kaiteri shared path, or am I just by myself? Oh, good.
That's running speed bumps on the side streets. Which often are illegal anyway. Over height.
So there's essentially two choices as I see it, is that transport choices local share 400k with the following backup packages available and move the Kaiteri shared path up into a project and package so it becomes ABCD, or community pool, library landscaping, skate park work, and 730 into transport options. To be fair, as much as I'm an advocate for the skate project, it's probably the outlier. Because it's got some pretty solid funding. There's potentially some other localised funding for it.
So just on that skate park, their option will be to apply for more grant funding to cover 40 to 50k because the delivery costs have gone up.
Yeah. But when I balance that, if that's the difference between the Kaiteri work and not the Kaiteri work, I struggle a little bit with it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, hence the reason why I believe that we've got to get some kind of capital structure for the ratepayer of Motueka in return for the handing over the assets of Motueka to an extent, and hence the reason why I'm harping a bit. But at the end of the day, there's no other way to get a pool. We've got to find the money for it as best way we can. And I've just heard that the pool committee has run into major confrontation with the high school. So our town could very well end up with no pool. That is a worry. And quite frankly, it puts it ahead of any other trails or anything else. It is an absolute necessity to keep that pushed to the max. And, you know, this is what the feedback from the ratepayer is. The feedback from everywhere is the same, harp on. And that's why I'm harping on, because this is what I've been hearing all the time, and I'm getting sick of it. I don't like it being put on the back burner all the time. It's been asked for about the 10th feasibility study. We've got one coming shortly. And I think we've just got to get them behind it with some funding to get it started. Get on with the damn project. And there could very well be a situation where the town has not got a swimming facility. So that is a very big worry for the people that are commuting to Richmond and also the little pool in Marpur, just to try and get some time in the pool. And the question that I've been asked as a council representative is the fact that why the hell haven't we? We go to 2 very small towns elsewhere in the country and they've got lovely heated pools and we haven't got one. So I'm afraid the ratepayer funding base are starting to say we want these facilities.
Maybe they should get course out of their pocket and start throwing some money in the bank.
Well, that's right.
I'm sorry, but I've been on that fundraising committee for 4 years now.
Yeah.
And we've made 250 grand for Christ's sake.
Yes.
I mean, everybody knows that it's going to cost a lot of money. It's not forthcoming.
No.
It's one of the reasons they're not forthcoming is because it's getting
Anyway,
short.
I think we'll be around this. Oh, David, sorry.
I don't know if this is totally relevant, but Richard did throw up something there which caused me concerned about something going on with the high school, and I'm just wondering how throwing more money at it is going to solve whatever problem that is that's going on with the high school.
I guess let's draw back to what's in front of us, but that's certainly outside area.
Okay.
What do I,
Sorry.
I guess, sorry.
I'm happy to drop the skate park situation so that you can reapply for funding.
Yep.
But I stand strongly on the transport, at least having money to be able to apply for the transport front. I can move from the skate park, but not the transport.
Okay, let me try and draft something to see if you're happy with it or not, because I guess the opportunity to maximise the investment from other parties is the key part here, isn't it? So if we go A, detailed design and community pool, $100,000, landscaping at the library, $70,000, C, design and construction of the Kaiteri shed past $330,000. And by my quick maths, is that $480,000 towards transport options? Is that the figures? And I don't know if that's going to ever exceed everyone, but is that 950,000? So 170, 330, it's 4 cents, 500, 400 and that's 450,000 left, isn't it? No, 400. It's 500. How much is left? So community pool 100,000.
Yeah.
Landscaping 70 is 170,000. 330. It's 2. That's 500. That's a balance of 450k. And I guess I'm just putting out there for discussion. Councillor.
Yeah, through Chair. The landscaping at the library, if better off funding didn't come along, how was that going to be funded?
You could ask that question about everything sitting in here. To be fair.
Well, I'm asking about this particular topic.
I don't think we've got anybody from Parks and Reserves here.
Through the chair, my advice from Richard Hollier is there is no funding to do that right now. So a basic planting is the option we've included in here with seating.
I just want the wrong place to raise this, but we had the, it was Donna McLeod was the woman who did all the Maori artwork here, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm not quite sure whether she was paid from the library fund or from the iwi, what's it called? The iwi salaries fund. And I'm just wondering whether, if it was the library fund, we may be able to get some funding to offset. Who would know that? I've got no idea. Perhaps
Didn't
Like-
show on the budget
like
sheet, so I
Drummond or
presume
whatever.
it came from iwi.
I would hope it wouldn't be more than 25% of that cost, but I don't know. So there's still going to be a gap. So in terms of what we currently have, what I've currently put up here. Oh, yeah, David.
Dwayne.
Dwayne.
Yeah, through the chair, just to address Councillor Ogilvy's question. Look, one of the last conversations I had with Susan Edwards before she left was around the library project and then, you know, why this money would be necessary, why it couldn't come from the capital budget for the library. And she was really very clear that they had pretty much spent every last cent in the library project budget. And it was all properly accounted for. So that's essentially why there was probably no going back and rectifying that. The choice is either let the matter lie for another day, which is always a possibility, or use this funding.
So currently what I've got in front of you is essentially package 2, moving the criteria into a confirmed project and giving you the choice of the projects. That just happens there's 2 projects sitting in there that total 400,000. Remember, if it's the transport options, then you get a heck of a lot more for your buck than you all through that. Here's Councillor Walker. So if so currently it says if it's unsuccessful, $100,000 for the bond channels.
It's not just me that's so confused. I know we've had long meetings to rush through, but
You're at 1.5.
So if we went for package 2, skate park out, criteria shed park in, there would be $450,000 towards the transport choices application. If that failed, there's still enough money to do those 2 projects that are proposed in this schedule. If that succeeded, those projects would only take up about $40,000 of that money. It's 10%, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. And then there's still quite a significant amount to go towards other bits in that project. I just think that criteria shared pathway is probably really important. Everybody heard about the safety issues. And if that's the only option to keep it in there.
So it's a substantial amount of money, like it's 330,000.
There's a lot
I
of.
would hand on heart say there would be more likely to get an accident on that shared pathway than in High Street Motueka.
I understand, but the reason I understand, I know it's such a small amount of money, and obviously I mountain bike, so I use that regularly. I see that, I see what that is, but 730,000, we would actually get is progressing strategy. I think is really important for Motueka at the moment, and so I personally would stick. Yeah, all right. But what do you think about, just about, obviously, designated 10%. Do you think that if we only have, 450?
Yeah.
That it would still be as likely for us to get?
So through the chair, it's hard to say. What the fund is looking for is local share. And we wanted to make that local share enough to say that we've got skin in the game. And so 10% was what we felt as though would be reasonable. And that's in line with other waka kotahi and government packages that want some sort of skin in the game, so around that 10%. That's not to say that we couldn't take a lesser amount, but we just don't know if that has the same degree of weight as what 10% would.
Is there other funding options currently sitting in budgets that could help? Because if the Transport Choices Fund came along, I suspect without the Better Off funding, we would still be looking at options of how we could puts the applications in.
So through the chair, that's exactly right. Yes, if to try and find a local share for anything,
Yeah.
we're struggling. Within the transportation budgets that we had, we did get cut back when we went through the National Land Transport Funds for the beginning of this long-term plan schedule. So we are running on a pretty lean budget as it is. So trying to find some additional funds within that is challenging, would be the nicest way of saying it. Difficult to none would be the more harsh way of saying it.
So in terms of the active transport integration, is there currently any funding sitting in footpaths and whatever funds you have that could assist in towards that project?
So through the chair, one of the things that I've been quite clear about is that we can't use funding that already has national transport funding already associated with it.
Yeah.
So we're trying to screw a very fine line around this. And that's why the better off funding is a good option.
Yeah.
Because they have confirmed that we can use that as an option. And it doesn't get counted as central government funding already contributed towards that.
So can I just ask something?
Mm.
Just about, just because looking at the 100,000 for the detailed design of the community hall, and you just said you talked around a 10 million figure, which is.
No, that's not been
That's just what they were given. That was the figure they were given. So is it, in your opinion, is it worth even putting that in if we are looking at a $10 million?
If it's gonna take 10 million,
Sorry, I expect if the $100,000.
Yeah.
And we know what the feasibility study is coming to the community board in September, I'm told. And then for the council also in September. Therefore we'll know whether that's going to be a realistic possible project for the community to fund, because the arrangement is so far like $2 million from the council and the balance from the community. And whether that happens, we tried to get 1 for 2 or 2 for 1. That may still happen, but it'll be up to council decision as to whether it's one or the other. So at the very least, it'll be 2 million from the council. So we may have to find the balance, or if it's 2 for 1, we may then have to find, even then, 3 millions. Even that's,
I'm just saying that's one.
it's a big project for the community.
That's
at
1%.
Even 2 million.
Yeah, that's 1% of the total cost just to get a detailed design to choose if we want it or not. So, well, if we can afford it.
So 5 years in which
Yeah.
if that funding didn't get used in 5 years, can it be reallocated to something else?
Could be an Amy question. If the funding is used within the 5 years, Amy, can it get reallocated or is it taken back?
It rolls over to tranche 2, assuming that tranche 2 is still available.
And Jane, let's answer your question. That's the other point. Like branch 2 coming up. And I have to also say, when this was first discussed at the council, there was good support from other councillors for the Motueka pool.
Okay. And it's just short
For Golden Bay and for Waimea in particular.
Okay, yeah. Okay, yeah.
I see.
Okay.
Does anybody know if Three Waters is repealed and there's just a change in policy, does this money still get retained by council?
I might deal with that if that's right, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, look, certainly, I think it would be very difficult. Let's just posit that there's a national-led government or something next year, and somehow they either, amend or reverse the Three Waters reforms. I think it would be very difficult, given the councils would have entered into contractually this funding with Crown Infrastructure Partners for them to withdraw tranche 1 funding. But I think it's a fair bet to say nobody really knows what's going to go on with tranche 2.
Yes, yeah, and that's the issue in tranche 2. Okay, because the other bit in terms of certainty around the community pool, you're also backing certainty over funding through transport options.
I was just asking.
Yeah, so everything in here, apart from putting some plants around the library, is probably reliant on some other things lining up as well. So I think we've got two choices, and that's A, B, C and 450, or potentially A and B and 730. It might even be more now.
We complete with some money for at least the landscape. I can't.
We already haven't got enough, and it's not. I read the. I know you're going to ask for the historical walk, wasn't it? Was it? Yeah. I don't think so. I think it's the report's been done. We've had a couple of conversations about it. We've got a couple of options in here, and now we're drawn over the ones that were the most important at the time. We're taking them. It's me personally. Is anybody else interested in the historical wharf? 4 cents promised me that was going to be finished 5.5 years ago.
No, I'm sorry, I don't have a lot of sympathy for that.
Yeah.
Chair, sorry, I'm just not sure if this is right. I might need Amy to confirm it. But on page 5, it talks about package 2, which includes A, B, C, which is the landscaping and the skate park, and then the transport choices.
Yes, sorry.
Which is what can all be accommodated with the budget. Is that right, Amy?
Sorry, can you ask that again?
Oh, sorry, just what I was hearing at the table here, it just sounded as though that the landscaping at the library couldn't be accommodated in package 2.
No, it can be.
But it can be.
Yeah, what the fallout of the current package 2 is read as a criteria shared path. Yes, potentially the fallout.
Yes.
So what you're potentially saying is the criteria shared path stays in and isn't included in the transport.
That's what I'm saying, but I'm not sure that's the consensus around the table.
No, I'm sorry.
So we're going to talk about the criteria shared path. Is it an important project that you want staying in, or do you want to drop it down to a backup project?
That's where I stand.
I think though, it's assuming that we will get it. It's still a chance, but it's still in the backup.
It's in the backup. So we're saying,
It's still.
because we already have the
What's the
50%
point,
of money confirmed.
Yes, correct.
So we have 50% in the bank to do the project. This would get it done. We put it as a backup project on the basis we could get some others for other projects. Doesn't make sense to me, but that's okay. That's just me.
Do it within the
I just need to rack my brain over when in the LTP, the Motueka High Street landscaping was in there.
Oh, it's year 6.
Year 6.
Yeah, so it's probably 5 years away now.
So how do you sell this to our community that we're going to pump all this money into criteria, but not anything on our history?
We were already in support.
Not that I'm not supporting development criteria, but how do you sell that to your community as a good news story when you look at the balance of what percentage goes where? The criteria gets that 330.
So my understanding is that projects, not in front of some of these other projects, has 50% funding already sitting in the pot to go. And I'm interested. I know these are pulled out of the strategy, but in terms of, I think we've had around this table since I've been here 4 instances where we've talked about the safety issues and criteria.
Yes. However, after the last weather event, how many incidents are we having on Car Street with the major potholes that we've had Band-Aids put on upon Band-Aids? How do I sell that to my community is my question.
How do you? That's why you're sitting around the table. So how do you sell it, and where do you sit in terms of where this funding should go? I guess that's the question.
Car Street aren't even included in this funding, regardless of
Well,
what.
they could be, because they could be some of the traffic ramps that do some calming so the trucks don't go down there. And that was, are they $70,000 each? $100,000 each. So installing 7 raised speed tables could divert traffic from down there potentially.
But then a walking and cycling track probably would divert them just as quick, wouldn't it?
So,
what you're suggesting is say 100,000 for the pool.
Yeah.
70,000 for the library.
Yeah.
330 for the.
that's the grey part. Yeah. No, what I'm suggesting is 330 for the,
Okay, so
yeah.
it's 500,000.
Yes.
And the other 450 is coming from the transport.
We'll support the projects on page 8, either or some projects on page 8. Because if you wanted the full, so if staff thought they needed 10% share, then obviously there'd be a project that would miss out in there. You'd have 450,000 to leverage 4.5 million to do 6%.
So I'm going to just be unwavering, but
That's all right. I just need to know what this, where we're going.
It is quite confusing, no doubt about that.
I'm with you. Just go.
Well, ultimately, there's going to be a recommendation to the council.
No,
We're going to go for it. So tomorrow, or whenever, it's a couple of weeks away. David Armstrong, what's your thoughts? I think where we are is the only bit we're not in together is the 330 a project definitely, or do we drop it down to a backup project and allocate the balance to the transport options?
yeah, I suppose this the next choice. What?
Tony's made.
I am, sorry. I'm still struggling with working out the Kaiteri shared path one, I'm afraid, because I can't quite hear some of the people speaking all the time. I do tend to prefer having that in there with if the skate park upgrade work, it sounds to me like that's not a high priority now. The numbers add up there, so it's what, 400,000 for the transport choices thing is called. Then I don't know. Sorry, my brain's not working fast enough.
Well, let's do this then we'll definitely know. So I'll move that we, what are we going to do? We received the Better Off funding, that we agree to endorse the package that says, A, detailed design of community pool, $100,000, landscaping at the library, $70,000, design and construction of the Kaiteri shed path, $330,000, and then the balance of that, which I believe is $450,000, to be used towards the transport choices local share of projects, and then taken item 2 out of that thing in D. Then we'll see. So is there somebody to second that? Seconded by Councillor Dowling. Any other discussion? And then we're going to vote or amend it. Any other discussion?
I'm not 100% certain that I'm actually in a position to vote.
Well,
So I'm going on the 22nd of September to speak on behalf of my community. I can't.
this is your community here. Dwayne's probably sat around this table heaps of times. Should councillors be voting in this, Dwayne, or should councillors abstain?
Through the chair, I don't think there's any issue with councillors voting on this particular decision. The fact that it's being recommended back up to council just means that they will make their views known at that council table as well. Yeah, I don't think there's any particular issue. I guess the one thing I would say is that the councillor may wish to disclose when they're in the 22nd full council meeting, just be upfront that they, in the debate, that they voted possibly not in favour of the recommendation from the Motueka Community Board. I think that covers your interests.
Awesome, thank you. So I guess you get a choice of yes, no, or you can abstain. I'll give you the pass. But you know, I guess my pushback is this is the local community here. This is local funding. Yes. When you get considered for the allocation, this is a greater pool, then the recommendation, I hope council accept what the board sends through as a majority. Because it's been workshopped, the amount of money has already been decided. It's simply now, from a local perspective, what are the projects involved in for your community, and this is the community.
Thanks for clarifying.
You're welcome. So, seconded by Councillor Dowling. Any other discussion? Then we'll vote. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against?
Not happy.
Against?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I just don't see.
You know, it's okay.
We've got
David Armstrong, for or against?
For.
4. Okay, so if you want to report the numbers, it's carried. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 2.
See, I'm struggling with that because at the end of the day,
It just moved. So is there anything else on this agenda that I need to do before we go? And then we can struggle with the conversation afterwards. That's it. Would you like to close this, Joni?
Probably just make sure, sorry, Mr. Chair to interrupt. Just make sure you cover off resolutions 1 and 3 as well, receive the report and sorry, I wasn't quite sure whether resolution 3 was in your,
Staff required the above package. Oh, sorry, yes, and add 3, yes. Yeah. We got the amendment? Yeah. And you've deleted the item number 2 from D in the packet, yeah. Okay, Joni.
Kia tau tōrang mari e ki runga i nā iwi o te awa.
Awesome, thank you. We close. I guess that just shows how hard it is when you've got money to distribute. And I think we have many of those nationally and locally, and I'm glad you're experienced on the slide when you've got money to give away.
no, it's just we've potentially got a little bit of a ratepayer rob coming up there because I asked some big questions about that.
What's that?
The community facilities.
That's what
we're worried about. And it is a big worry. I'm absolutely